So our next keynote speaker is Dennis Stoica. Dennis has been active in Catholic Marriage Ministries for the past 28 years in the areas of marriage preparation, marriage enrichment, troubled marriages, blended families, and divorce recovery. He founded and led the largest healthy marriage coalition in the country, the California Healthy Marriages Coalition, which served over 200,000 people in its first 10 years. That's wonderful. He also led the most successful community marriage initiative in the country in Jacksonville, Florida, from 2015 to 2018, experienced the most dramatic reduction in countrywide divorce rates ever seen from one of these initiatives. In 2011, he was the recipient of the Diocesan of San Bernardino's first ever Marriage Building Award. He has an MBA from Harvard and now lives in Panama City Beach, Florida with Sandy, his wife of 24 years. What's that address? Because I think that might be, surely you're going to let us all come. Okay, he says yes. So please welcome Dennis Stoica.
All right, we have energy in the room. All right, let's have some energy going. All right. Hey, we're going to talk about marriage today. Woohoo! That's my favorite topic. I don't know about y'all, but that's my favorite topic. Hey, so about a couple months ago, Mike Day asked me, he said, hey, can you send out a summary of what it is you're going to talk about? And so I put one together, and what I want to do is kind of read that so you can see where we're going. I'm a type of person that likes to lay out where we're going so people can kind of see where it is and decide whether they want to stay or, go shopping or something. All right, so the summary, I'll just read it. Jesus commanded that we love one another. Marriage ministry operationalizes that gospel message by teaching couples how to love one another. In addition, marriage ministries create numerous opportunities for Catholic dioceses and parishes, opportunities for evangelization, discipleship, and the practical application of the gospel. In this presentation, Dennis will review those opportunities, share his perspective on promising practices, and introduce a new funding source for innovative diocesan marriage initiatives. That's at the end of the abstract. Do you guys want me to wait till the end of the talk to talk about the money, or would you like to hear about it earlier? Earlier? Oh, okay, just checking. And a warning, this keynote will be a call to action, highlighting tools and resources available to act upon that call. So since you guys want to talk about the money early, I want to introduce the Catholic Marriage Initiative Fund. Over the next few years, the Catholic Marriage Initiative Fund, here referred to often as the CMI Fund, is willing to invest $1 million to fund the following 3 types of projects within U.S. Catholic dioceses. So I'll tell you there's 3 levels: level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 is for dioceses up to $100,000 over several years, so split between several years. Level 2 is up to $5,000 for a specific purpose, and level 1 is $1,000 for a specific purpose. So let's look at each of them. Level 1, looking to fund between 5 and 10 dioceses over the next several years at $100,000 each. These dioceses are dioceses that want to strategically implement some of the key concepts described in this presentation. Project lengths to the projects will be between 2 and 5 years. The diocese can decide how long they want the money to be spread over. It requires a match, and there will be a competitive application process. So that's the first, level 1. The next is 10 to 20 dioceses, level 2, at $5,000 each. And that will be to provide leadership training for at least 12 key couples. Now, we hope it's more like 20, 12 to 20 to 30, but at least 12 key couples in one of several pre-approved marriage programs. No match requirement on level 2. There will be a competitive application process for that one. Level 3 is any diocese can get it for $1,000, no limit. What is there, 168 dioceses or something like that? So if everybody applies for this particular purpose, and what that purpose is, it's to cover expenses for one person from the diocese to attend a specific marriage ministry training conference that's happening October 16th and 17th in Dallas. No match requirement, and that's a 5-minute application process. Automatic approval for single attendees for diocese. That's kind of an overview. And since level 1 is the one that would be implementing a number of the concepts of the presentation, we'll talk about it really at the end. Since we say that marriage ministries, in my view, is the best way to operationalize the gospel, I just want to kind of get on the record what gospel passages I'm going to be referring to in the rest of the presentation. John 13, 34, 35. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. The next passage is, what's the greatest commandment? And the answer is, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. We'll also talk about Corinthians 13, 4 through 6. Love is patient, love is kind, etc. Proverbs 29:18. Where there is no vision, the people perish. But he that keeps the law, happy is he. Where that will come into play is we're going to be talking about, we believe the church should be setting a vision for marriages. And if the church doesn't set a vision for marriage, the people perish. And people are perishing in their marriages right now. So we're going to be looking at increasing the amount of vision setting is what I'll be calling for in that part of the talk. James 2. If a brother or sister has nothing to wear and no food for the day, and you say to them, goodbye and good luck, keep warm and well fed, but do not meet their bodily needs, what good is that? Of course, the context for that is if a couple comes into your office and they're struggling in their marriage, and you say, well, keep warm, well fed, pray. Of what good is it if you can't give them help? So I think our mission is to go beyond and actually serve. That's the context of that. And Matthew 28, 16 to 20 is the Great Commission. So those are kind of the key scripture passages that we'll be talking about. Now, so as you can see, the first half of them is all about love. Jesus talks a lot about love. This chart shows why marriage matters in America. The top part, the blue, is all the positive things that happen, when you've got strong marriages. And it's broken into areas, and by the way, the red is everything that's bad when marriages fall apart. And so it's what we've heard, is that when marriages succeed, societies flourish, kids flourish, crime rate drops, poverty drops, a whole host of areas in a community. By the way, we as church are interested, caring, compassionate about all the people that get hurt when that occurs. So in fact, if we can take a preventative method to say actually strengthen marriages so that those bad things don't happen as often, that's really doing a much better job than putting Band-Aids on after the fact. I want to look a little bit at some demographics here. That's no surprise to people, right? That millennials have a significantly higher unaffiliated religious population. So 43% of millennials are unaffiliated versus 30% for Gen X, 22% for boomers. Interesting enough, however, all generations attend church regularly the same rate if their parents are married. So of families where the parents are married, 30% of millennials attend church on a regular basis, 35% of Gen X and 35% of boomers. Gee, that would seem to say is if we can keep marriages together, that could stem the tide. And in fact, what do we find is that a millennial with married parents is 78% more likely to go to church than a millennial whose parents have split up. So I think we've heard a lot about, the fall off of church participation, not only the Catholic Church, but all, Christian denominations. Now, if we're able to actually stem the tide and build healthy marriages, we can reverse that. So I retired at the age of 41. And, God's blessed me financially. So I spent about a year trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Whether I wanted to make a lot of money or make a difference. And if I was going to make a difference, what area would I want to actually be doing that work in? And I looked around, and what I discovered is that as the breakup of the American family, that's the root cause of so many problems. So what I discovered was that strengthening marriages is the one lever I could pull that would have the greatest ripple effect across society. And that's true for me, and it's true for everybody here. If you're looking for your life to make a difference, This is the field be in. The good news is we know how to do this. How many people remember the old TV program, $6 Million Man? Yeah. So the lead-in starts by he's saying, Steve Austin crashed, and he's on the operating table.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. We have the capability to make the world's first bionic man. Steve Austin will be that man. Better than he was before. Better, stronger, faster.
I'm here to tell you that's true about marriages right now. We can rebuild them. We have the technology. We can make them better, faster, stronger. And we'll get into that during the presentation. And that's what we're called to do by church, as church, is to do that. So I say in the intro that, that marriage ministries can operationalize the gospel. And one of the gospel passages I pointed out was 1 Corinthians 13, where we talk about love is. And so if you look at what love is, how do you operationalize? How do you operationalize that love is patient, that love is kind, is not jealous, does not brag, is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly? And what I submit to you is, if we can teach couples how to love each other, we're operationalizing the gospel in all of those areas. We'll have a chance to look at that a little bit later. I'm about to put up a slide that Jim Healy is going to say, God, where have I ever seen that before? To be most effective, marriage ministries should be balanced between vision, skills, and support. And I called Jim out on it because I went to one of his ministry training workshops at NACFLM probably about 10 years ago, and it's when I first heard this concept. And he put the PowerPoint up, and we talked about it, and it just made sense. Now, I want to be clear. We're not saying that every marriage program needs to be balanced across those three. But we do believe that there should be marriage ministries across all the age and stages of marital life. What we're saying is that in every age and stage, there needs to be a balance between vision, skills, and support. It's perfectly okay if you got one program over here that's really strong on vision, someone over here very strong on skills. How many people here are familiar with either Teams of Our Lady or Domestic Church? Yeah, those are examples. Really strong on vision, really strong on support, not that strong on skills, but that's okay. We don't need every program to be strong on all three. Does that make sense? It's the balance act of what we want. And by the way, I'm in a domestic church circle, so it's not a knock on domestic church. I value that. But it's important to understand the positioning of each of our ministries. So we talk about vision, skills, and support. So I want to start with vision. And by the way, notice that's the base of the triangle. That's the base. It rests on vision. So what am I talking about when I talk about vision in marriage ministry? Very simply, God's plans and teachings for marriage. That's what vision is. So what are some examples of that? Well, I think you know the list. Love one another, unconditional love, marriage is a sacrament, indissolubility of marriage, covenant versus contract, mutual submission, forgiveness, leaving, cleaving. Another way to say it is, amoris laetitia. If you want to know the church's vision on marriage, read Amoris Laetitia. If it looks like too thick a book, then read the study guide. It's almost as good. As a matter of fact, what I really suggest to people is read the study guide first, because it really can, you can see the framework, and then you can go deeper in the areas. So I think we're all clear on vision, and there's lots of people in this room that can speak much better than me about vision. But here's what I'm saying. What I'm calling out is I want the church to expand their vision on marriage. I don't mean widen, I mean, I'm calling for the church to be stronger in calling out the vision. But so here's the question. How does vision get disseminated? Like, so what does that look like when I want more vision? Actually, I think the key lever on that is priests, pastors, from the pulpit, incorporating pro-marriage messages in a greater number of homilies. They're the leader of their flock. They need to be sending that message out, that marriage is important, that marriage is sacred, that marriage is a good thing to aspire to. So yeah, vision is really important. So that's vision. Now let's look at skills. So skills, basically what we're talking about is how to love one another. So we know we're supposed to love one another, but like, what does that look like? And so this is just a list of about 30 different skills that are taught in various adult marriage and relationship education programs, here in the U.S. Now, I want to be clear again. There's no one program that has all 30, but they're covered in various ones. And now we want to kind of do an assessment. So what I'm asking on this one, let me read my instructions on it. Take 2 minutes to read through the list of the 30 examples of skills taught in various marriage education programs. So using this chart here. Next to each one, put a check mark or an X in the column A, B, or C that represents your opinion of the importance of each of those skills to married couples. So if you think that particular skill is very important, you'd put a check mark in the A box. If you think it's somewhat important, you'd put a check in the B box. If you think it's not very important, check the C box. So you're looking for married couples to know how to do, yes. And so we're going to start. Now, I do want to say, it's only 2 minutes. It's not important that you finish the whole list. Just get as many as you can. If you do finish the whole list, then what we want you to do is total the columns of A, B, and C and write your numbers at the bottom where it has the total line. Now, if I call 2 minutes, or if I call like minute and 50 seconds, and you haven't finished, then go ahead and start counting. As long as it's close enough for the purpose of the exercise. So, and you'll have coaches around if you've got any questions. So, begin. Okay, so if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and count up the number of items in A, B, and C. Write those numbers in your total. When you're done writing your number, please put a pencil down so I can see we're complete. Okay, so just as a show of hands, so first of all, take a look at your 3 numbers, A's, B's, and C's. So I'm just going to call out each of the letters. Who had more C's than either B's or A's? So 1, okay, good. Anybody else? All right. Who had more B's than A's or C's? I think we had 1, 2, 3. So, maybe half a dozen had more B's than the others. How about A's? How many people had more A's? Okay, the A team. Okay, yeah, all right. So, a lot of skills, you see, are necessary for couples. The next step we want you to do is only look at the skills that you labeled with an A. So those skills that you said were very important. As you look at those skills, think about the types of couples that you work the most closely with. And for those couples, think about whether, on each skill, whether those couples already do know and practice that skill, or do not know and don't practice that skill. So if most know and practice the skill, you'll put a check in the MK acronym for most know. And if most of the couples you work with or closely with don't know or use that skill or proficient in it, put it in the most don't know. And then as before, count up the number of check marks you have in both the MK, the most know, and the MDK, most don't know. So if you've counted up, go ahead and write the number in and then put your pencil down so I can see. Okay, I want to take a look at the number, the total number that you have in the MDK number. These are very important skills for your couples that most don't know. And so what I'd like to do is, if you have a number in there that's greater than 0, raise your hand. Greater than 0, raise your hand. And keep your hand raised as I count up for there, so I have a sense. So you have 0, is that right? Because your hand's not raised? Oh, you're together. Oh, okay. All right. So at least 0, okay. At least 1, at least 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it looks around 11, just look about half the people have their arms up. So around 11 looks about the halfway mark. But you think about it, that's 11 out of 30 skills that we're saying, that you're saying are very important skills for your couples to know, and most don't know them. I want you to think about those skills. So take a minute and just circle those number that they are, just so you're kind of rereading those skills. Because those are the skills I want you to be thinking about for the rest of the presentation. Because those are the skills you see are very important. Most of your couples don't know it. What we're now going to talk about is a model for teaching skills in a group setting. Now, by the way, this is a universal model for teaching skills in a group setting. If you think about how people learn to ski or play tennis or anything in group setting, pretty much follow this model. It's a 6-step process that's used. Number 1, the first thing that's done is we present the theory behind the skill. The second step is to provide step-by-step instructions on how to do the skill. The third is the instructor will typically demonstrate the skill. The fourth is the instructor will process the demo. They'll answer any questions they might have that the participants might have. So that's step 4. Step 5 is the participants will have a chance to actually practice the skills. When that occurs, the instructor is observing the participants practicing skills and give feedback on how they're doing. And the 6th step is then the instructor will process the practice, answer any questions they have, and this is often a chance where the instructor can actually go deeper in the teaching. It's an additional teaching opportunity. So if you look at the 6 steps and think about any skills you've ever learned in a group setting, I think you're likely to find that this is an approach that was used. All right, so we've talked about the 6-step approach on how to teach skills. Now we want to show how that works by actually teaching and then demonstrating 2 different skills. One of those is an adaptation of something that was in a course called World-Class Marriage and World-Class Relationships. The second one is something that we pulled out of Adventures in Marriage. So we're doing this just as an example so you get a sense of the type of things that are covered in these various marriage and relationship skills courses. All right, so we're going to start with this slide, which is we're going to show you a 4-step, 2-minute listening skill exercise. Now I should clarify, the listening skill exercise is going to take 2 minutes. It may take me a little bit longer to actually teach the skill. But it's a 4-step skill as you see listed on the slides. The first one is pay close attention. So when you do this, we want you to be looking at your partner, making eye contact with them, really focusing on them, paying attention to everything that's going on. So that's the first step, is pay close attention to your partner. The second one, which is listen intently to what your partner says. This is a listening skill, so it makes sense you actually have to listen as part of that. So the first was pay close attention and then listen. And you want to be listening to the words that come out of their mouth, but also to the tone of voice and their inflection and their pace, to everything. That's step 2. Step 3, acknowledge their experience by providing them with non-content verbal cues. Now this can take the form of, oh, I see. Really? Wow. So what you're doing is you're showing an emotional connection to your partner. So that's step 3, is acknowledge their experience. What you're doing is you're connecting with them at an emotional level. You're attuned to their feelings and behaving appropriately. That's step 3. And step 4 is you simply name their feeling. What we suggest on this is you can name somebody's feelings in just 2 words. I'll give you 2 examples of what that might look like. The 2 words, you could either start the phrase with how or sounds. So for example, if it was how, if they sounded frustrated, you'd say, how frustrating. Or if they're disappointed, how disappointing. But notice you could also replace the how with sounds, like sounds frustrating or sounds exciting. So those are 2 lead-in, all right? So those are the 4 steps. So if you look at the first letters of each of the words, it spells plan. Pay attention, listen intently, acknowledge their experience, name their feeling. And we'll see how that acronym actually works in real life. And now we want to have a chance to actually see what that looks like. So we've got a couple that will demonstrate this skill, all right? Carolyn, do you have a story you can share with us?
I do. Recently, I had one of my really good friends move away.
Ooh.
And it was really sad.
Yeah.
And I have another really good friend who's actually moving across country
Ouch.
in about a month. So losing a lot of people is not fun.
No,
And
it's
it was,
painful.
Yeah, exactly. It was a little rough. We just kind of reconnected as friends for the past 6 months. And then she left me to go to Philadelphia. So I was a little sad about that.
So it's almost like you're feeling abandoned by them.
Honestly, yeah, a little bit. So it was really sad, but there's always new friends to make, and now I have a place to go visit her in Philadelphia, so that's exciting.
So you're looking at the silver lining,
Yeah, so it's a little positivity that I'm trying to avoid being sad.
but the underlying feeling really is this really deep sadness
Right.
over losing friends that you've connected with over the years, and that really
Definitely.
does make you sad,
Yes.
and a feeling of loss.
Yeah,
Yeah. Is there more?
that's it.
Okay. So through the process, did you feel listened to?
Definitely, yep.
Okay. And how did it feel to be listened to at that level?
It feels good. It feels like someone's understanding you and someone's processing with you. So it's a nice, especially when you're talking about, I feel like sadder feelings.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have that back and forth.
Okay, great. Super. And so, what did you see? Good. So, thank you for volunteering to do the demonstration.
Yeah.
So one of you will have a chance to be the speaker and the other listener, and then we'll switch it around. And typically in this, we'll have the shorter person speak first. All right? So you'll be the first speaker and you'll be the listener.
Okay.
So, and when you're the listener, just want to remind you of the 4-step process we're going to ask you to do using the PLAN acronym. P, pay close attention. L, listen intently. A, acknowledge her experience with the content-free verbalizations like, wow, or the head nod. And N is name the feeling. All right? Got it?
Sure.
Let's take it away.
Okay, awesome. So I was at dinner with a bunch of my friends, and my one friend has recently started dating this boy.
Ooh.
Yeah, and so I was trying to get her attention from across the table because I wanted to tell her something, and he held up his hand to me and said, "We're talking."
Wow.
Yeah. So I felt very hurt, and it was rude, and so I didn't talk to her for the rest of the night. And now we are not speaking.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So that was a really impactful night.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of their first date, so I get it, but it was hurtful, and she didn't say anything. So.
And I can certainly sense that you're a little hurt by everything that's happened too. And maybe also a little fearful too for her about maybe how controlling he's being a little bit.
Yeah, she has just gotten out of a long relationship where she found out that he lied about a lot of things. So it's just like I don't want her to get into that again, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
Jeff, that was a great example of she didn't say a particular feeling, but you read it. You read it in the way she'd expressed her concern about her friend, and you instinctively picked up on that, yeah, she had some fear and concern about her friend. And that's an exact great demonstration of what we're trying to go here. That we're not just repeating back the feelings that were stated, it's you're attuned enough to your partner that you're picking up on those feelings and feeding them back. So excellent job. Great.
I felt listened to.
Yeah, you did feel listened to, yeah. And how did that feel to be listened to at that level?
It felt good, yeah, because, when something like that happens, you feel kind of isolated, and to have somebody listen to you and give you feedback like that makes you feel better about the situation.
Yeah, and when he volunteered the feeling of that you felt fear for her.
Spot on.
Yeah, even though you hadn't said those words yourself,
right.
They just really, his volunteering that really resonated with you, didn't it?
For sure. Definitely.
And didn't that make you feel particularly listened to?
Oh, yeah.
Because it wasn't just repeating back your words, he really got you at that level. Is that right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Great. Super. Thank you very much. So at this point, make sure you pair up with somebody. Coaches, make sure everybody in your area has a partner. If you don't have your partner, raise your hand. Anybody who doesn't have a partner, raise your hand. All right, and the way it's going to be is the shorter person will go first unless they don't have an idea, then the other person can go. After 2 minutes, if you haven't had a chance to name the feeling, I'll have a chance for you to do it at the end. So go. Following the steps. Okay, we're out of time. All right. Stop. People that were the listener. If you didn't have a chance to name your partner's feelings, think for a minute about a feeling they had, turn to them and say, how, and do that feeling, and see if you got it right. How, okay? If you already did it, you don't have to do it at this point. Okay? Good. So, just 2 or 3 people, just very quickly, how was that? How was that to be listened to at level? Did you feel listened to? Did you feel understood?
It felt very satisfying to be listened to.
It felt very satisfying to be listened to it that way. That's fine. That's okay. We'll go on, Mario. All right, good. So now we're going to change it around. Now the person that was the speaker is now going to be the listener. You've got your 4 steps. Pay close attention to your partner. Listen intently to what your partner says. Acknowledge their experience. Name their feeling. Now, one thing also is if you're doing the exercise and you've finished your topic and the time's still going, get another topic. You can do 2 or 3. We're just practicing here. All right, the person who was the speaker before, the person who was listened for, the speaker is now going to be the speaker. Go. Listener again, if you did not have a chance to name your partner's feelings, think of 1 or 2 feelings they had and just say, how, fill in the blank. Oh, good, let's process that. So, how was that?
Great.
Did you feel listened to, Steve?
Yes.
What?
I'm not Steve.
Ed, I'm sorry. Ed. Sorry about Ed.
You're next to Steve.
I can spell your last name. Exactly. Good point. Actually, I'll frame it this way. How many people did the listener name their feeling correctly? Did their listener name their feeling correctly? Good. Good. Go ahead.
I found it enlightening, and I could feel the excitement and the gratefulness of my partner when she was talking to me. So me focusing and being completely attentive to her really brought me into her story and her conversation.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that she's not even your spouse.
Wow.
Yeah, it is. I say that because as impactful it is amongst friends or coworkers, it's even more impactful when your husband or wife listens at that level. Okay, good. Yeah, good. All right. Being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they're almost indistinguishable. So that's one skill. Another skill we want to look at is complaints with requests for change. And it's a very simple format. The way it works is if you see something your partner does that you're not really thrilled with, you start by saying, instead of, and in this case it would be, instead of leaving your dishes in the sink, then you answer it with, I would prefer you rinsed them off. So, for example, it could be, instead of you leaving your dirty socks in the bedroom, I'd prefer it if you put it in the hamper. Or, as my wife told me when I came home from a trip a couple of weeks ago, Dennis, instead of you brushing your teeth and not rinsing out the sink, I'd prefer it if you rinse the sink out. I heard this, oh, I can do that. See, men are trainable. All right, so it's very simple. Now, the concept behind a complaint with request for change really comes from John Gottman's work. And what he's found is that criticism is something that really erodes relationships. And I'll be honest with you, most men are really kind of allergic to criticisms. We're very sensitive to it. This is a way in which each of us can kind of share what's going on in a way that's easy to be fixed. Now, this is not for a nuclear issue, right? This is just for the little things that are happening in your life. So examples are the ones I just gave. So that's kind of the modeling we would. So I just explained what the speaker does with complaint with request for change. Now let's look at what the listener does. So I want to remind you, it's called complaint with request for change. It's not complaint with demand for change or complaint with ultimatum for change. It's a request. And like any request, you as the listener have several options. If somebody makes a request, you can either say yes, you can say no, you can give a counter proposal, or you can say, I need to think about it. So, listener, just because he or she made the request doesn't mean you have to do it. And speaker, the same thing. So just because your partner made a request doesn't mean they have to do it. It's something they can think about. All right, so let's see a demonstration of that. Mario and Paula, thank you for agreeing to demonstrate. So what we'd like to have is have a chance for each of you to demonstrate the skill of complaint with request for change. And just to review, what the formula is instead of this, I would prefer that. Now, one thing I want to ask is when you do it, try to do it when you make the request, that you make it as a simple request and try to eliminate any attitude or tone from the voice, because people kind of tend to pick up on that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And after she's made the request, you can either say yes, you can say no, you can make a counter proposal, or you can say, I'll think about it. So, nobody's under a pressure to agree. It's just a request. All right?
Perfect.
So let's see how it goes. Great. So we'll have a chance to go back and forth on it. Who'd like to go first?
I'll let Paula go first.
Okay, good.
Mario, instead of leaving your keys on the counter, I would prefer you put them on the nail that's on the garage wall.
Okay, I'll try. Okay. Paula, instead of leaving the gas tank with just 1/4 of gas, I would prefer for you to have at least half a tank of gas.
Okay, I'll try that.
Thank you. Okay. So now we get a chance to pair up. Now what I'm going to suggest is role play this one. So because this is the first time you've done it, if you're here with your spouse, don't pick on an issue for your spouse. Instead, think of an issue perhaps with a coworker or a family member or something, like you've got kids, think about with your kids. And we'll have 2 minutes to do this, and you'll each just have a chance to practice kind of back and forth. Now, I was told that, so in the English it's instead of, I'd prefer. Some people speak Spanish, prefer the language of he notado this, me gustaría que. How did I do? Was I close? not so bad. Okay, very gringo, what can I say? So go ahead and pair up, and you can just trade, back and forth. Instead of this, I would prefer that. So how was that? So the objective of this is to be able to take something that normally would be a criticism, convert that to a complaint with request for change. Now, you've got a red box around something because this skill is actually one of the 7 sub-skills taught in a daily temperature reading. I consider that we call the daily temperature reading the Swiss Army knife of relationship skills, because we teach people how to do appreciations, share new information, ask puzzles, that if they have something that's puzzling them, questions, complaints with a request for change, apologies, prayer requests, wishes, hopes, and dreams. So, how well did I follow the model in the group setting? Presenting the theory, providing step-by-step instructions, demonstrating or having somebody demonstrate, process the demo, have you practice, and then process. And I guess my real question was, how is this approach similar to or different from how you cover communications in your current programs? Anybody have any response to that? I'll tell you my observation is that now this is what I've just seen, is that most premarital programs, for example, don't actually teach step-by-step approach to communication. Most communications programs, they have like about an hour module where they talk about communications, okay? Where there's a list of topics and they talk about communications and other things. But the skill itself is not present in most programs that I've seen. Kind of an analogy would be like this. A couple of weeks ago, I watched Wimbledon. It didn't improve my tennis game. The only way you would get better at something is actually doing something. Let me read what Pope Francis says about communication. I'm quoting in full paragraph 137 from Amoris Laetitia, where he says, "Take time, quality time. This means being ready to listen patiently and attentively to everything the other person wants to say. It requires the self-discipline of not speaking until the time is right. Instead of offering an opinion or advice, we need to be sure that we have heard everything the other person has to say. This means cultivating an interior silence that makes it possible to listen to the other person without mental or emotional distractions. Do not be rushed. Put aside all of your own needs and worries and make space. Often the other spouse does not need a solution to his or her problems, but simply to be heard, to feel that someone has acknowledged their pain, their disappointment, their fear, their anger, their hopes, and their dreams. How often we hear complaints like, "He does not listen to me," or, "Even when you seem to, you're really doing something else," or, "I talk to her, and I feel like she can't wait for me to finish," or, "When I speak to her, she tries to change the subject," or, "She gives me curt responses to end the conversation." Pope Francis understands the importance of communication. If you've ever done marriage counseling, this is going to sound very, very familiar to you. But here's the thing. If all we tell the couples is we'll just listen to each other without actually giving them a structure on how to do it, it's unlikely that they'll change their behavior. So that's what we're talking about on skills. Vision, skills. The third one we want to talk about is support. And as we look at support, I want to look at specific examples. So some examples are mentor or sponsor couples, skills coaches, either in class or after class, some sort of follow-up, or phone skills coaching. Support can be in the form of initial contact for crisis couples, or those initial contact being aware of other resources that are available in the community, providing aftercare to classes, small groups, such as Teams of Our Lady or Domestic Church, or just a Bible study. Really, it's accompanying people through their journey. Now, the reason that this kind of support is so important, I'll give you two examples. One is, if you go to a class, you learn something, but if you don't use it and you go away, you typically forget it very quickly. So having the support can be a reinforcement when needed. And next is just a little bit of brain chemistry. So this is a diagram of the relational brain. And there's an arrow up front to show that the diagram, so I'll point to my own head. So the front of my brain, the front of my head is the thinking brain. On the side, what they have in the green or the gray, is the emotional side, part of the brain. And the back is the survival, like when you're breathing and stuff. This is a brain scan. If you look to the right, what the brain looks like when somebody is not angry. So when they're calm, you see the parts that lights up is the front part, because they're thinking, as well as the back, because they're still breathing. The slide on the left under anger, you can see what the brain scan sees is all the activity in the limbic system, the emotional side, and nothing up front. So when emotions take over, they take over the limbic system and you shut down the brain. So one of the parts of the support is somebody being able to come along and calming the person down, helping them take a time out perhaps, or just regaining their balance. Now, by the way, this isn't just anger. It's any sort of emotional flooding that occurs, anxiety, etc. So this is an example of why support is so very important. So vision, skills, support. And so to be most effective, marriage ministries really should be balanced across the three. So we'd like you now to do another 2-minute exercise that's in your handout that lists this table here. We're asking you, what score would you give your parish or diocese in each category? And the way it's structured is you've got 10 different levels of relationship or marriage ministry that's on the left, and vision, skills, and support. And so we'd like, in each of those areas, rank it on a scale of 1 to 10. So if for example, you do a great job of vision for middle school, you put a 10 or an 8 in the vision. And then total across and total down. And we'll give you 2 minutes to do that as well. So if you haven't completed that exercise, that's something you can do after the conference. If you did complete, go ahead and add up your numbers down. And I'm curious, of those that did, I want to compare your scores between vision, skills, and support. How many people had vision as their highest number? Okay, how many people had skills as their highest number? Did anybody have skills as their highest number? 1? How many had support as their highest number? Total possible score is 300. Total possible score is 300. So when you get a chance to do the math, you can kind of get an assessment of where your parish or diocese are. And this is an opportunity where you can decide where you think there might be the best opportunity for improvement. So that's one assessment. Now I want to answer the question that says, what is possible when we combine vision, skills, and support? And we have a case study of marriage education in the Air Force. And this is a study where an organization called Live the Life has provided an 8-hour marriage enrichment program to over 1,500 Air Force personnel and their spouses. They did it a retrospective pre-post-test evaluation where they score questions on a scale of 1 to 5. And 1 is shown in the dark red, 2 is bright red, yellow is in the middle, light green is they scored high, and then a 5 would be the dark green. So this first question is, my spouse, partner, and I have the knowledge and skills to communicate well. You can see at the beginning that about 1/3 of the people said that, no, we disagree with that. We do not have the knowledge and skills to communicate well. But at the end of that weekend program, it was down to less than 2%. And look how In fact, what you end up with is over about 95% of the couples now strongly agree or very strongly agree with that statement. Next question is, I'm confident in our ability to resolve conflicts in a healthy way. Before the class, nearly half the people said, I strongly disagree or I disagree. But by the end, over 90% said that they do now have the skills to resolve conflicts in a healthy way. The next one, my spouse and partner listens to me when I need someone to talk to. The same type of thing. Dramatic shift in their perspective of that their spouse listens to them. And because their spouse listens to them, also similar score on it in our relationship, it is safe emotionally for me to confide and share with my spouse and partner. Key indicator of success in marriage is empathy. We look at two things, is self-empathy and other empathy. And my first one is, I am good at seeing problems and issues from my spouse and partner's point of view. Before, half the people said, I strongly or I disagree or strongly disagree with that statement. After the course, that number had dropped considerably. Look, we went from red to lime green or dark green. And the same thing on other empathy, that even though my spouse partner may feel differently than I do, he or she is able to see things from my point of view. And you put all that together, and it's really about transforming marriages, because when you ask the question of considering all things, how happy would you say that your relationship with your spouse and partner is? This is now on a scale of 1 to 5. You can see dramatic improvements to the green. And the question of if the marriage is going to make it and we're not headed for divorce, you can see going into the class, nearly 25% of the people thought there was a strong possibility of going for a divorce. And by the end of the weekend experience, less than 2%. So you could say that would significantly reduce the risk of divorce in 90% of the couples. This is your summary chart. And you can basically see on each of them dramatic shift from reds to greens.
Earlier in this presentation, we showed the clip from the $6 million man. And I'd like to take the slogan from that and apply it to marriages. Because you know what? As this slide clearly indicates, we have the technology. We can rebuild marriages. We can make them better, stronger, faster than they ever were. And that's what this is all about. It's about taking couples that have been struggling in the marriage and offering them an opportunity to build the type of marriage that they really wanted. Now, here's what's really exciting. This slide shows the results. Over 1,500 people sample size went through it over a weekend program that every diocese represented in this room now has the opportunity to bring into your own diocese. When we talk about the grant, where we can bring in marriage education, this is one of the programs that you have the opportunity to get your people trained in. This kind of dramatic result shown on this slide is available to every diocese here today.
Considering how much of a score improvement you saw there, how much do you think that those Air Force couples would also have improved on what I call the 1 Corinthians 13, 4-6, love is test? That if they're listening to each other, solving problems together, feeling emotionally safe, I submit there's a dramatic increase in their ability to love in the way that the gospel calls them to love. Those are dramatic shifts in that. And that's kind of those kind of results in these kind of programs is what's inspired the CMI Fund to be doing that type of project that we laid out at the beginning. So again, if we look at level 1, we're be willing to invest in between 5 and 10 dioceses over the next 5 years at the range of up to $100,000 who want to strategically implement this kind of approach. When I say this kind of approach, really dramatically increasing the amount of vision, skills, and support that are brought in support of marriage at the parish and diocesan level. That's what we're interested in funding. In addition to that, level 2 is the leadership training in courses such as Adventures in Marriage and stuff like that. And then the last one I want to talk about is the $1,000 grant opportunity to cover expenses for one person from a diocese to attend a marriage ministry training conference at Watermark Community Church in Dallas, which has arguably one of the best marriage ministries in the country. I will say this, if every church in America had the level of marriage ministry that Watermark Community Church has, we would reduce the divorce rate in America by somewhere between 80 and 90%. They do it right. By the way, if you do the math on that $1,000, the cost of the conference is $129. I looked just for fun to LA, flight from LAX, it's $259 cost. Most people in the country, you actually make money by taking that, receiving that grant. You can do it for less than $1,000. If you're interested in bringing 2 people to it, then we'll pay $1,000 for the first person and $500 for every more per addition from that diocese. So if you want to bring a team to find out about it, we're very open to that. So that's kind of that in overview. I want to follow up from the presentation. If you're interested in pursuing any of those grant opportunities, I'm having a webinar 3 weeks from today. So this seminar, this workshop, this plenary was at 1:30 today. So 3 weeks from then, so that is 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time on Monday, August 19th, we'll have a webinar to talk more deeply about the grant opportunities for people that are interested. After these slides, there's about a dozen slides that show dramatic program and progress that's been done in 4 key dioceses across the country. Specifically, I have them listed here chronologically: Rockford, Illinois, San Bernardino, California, Kansas City, Kansas, and St. Augustine in Jacksonville.
The last bullet on my summary slide for the keynote said that I'd be highlighting tools and resources available to act upon the call to action. So I want to quickly highlight 6 tools and resources that are well worth you knowing about. The first is a website, usmarriage.org, which is an electronic clearinghouse of all marriage-related resources and programs across the United States. This is an excellent place to both find and to post marriage classes. The graphic shows one city, San Antonio. You can see graphically on the left how many dots there are. That's a place every time there's a resource. And on the right side is the information on each. Well worth checking out, well worth posting your classes to. Good. The second resource I want to highlight is a program called ePrep. ePrep came out of the most well-researched marriage enrichment program in the country called PrEP. They've moved that to an online platform that is incredibly inexpensive. Single licenses are $34.95 each, but if you buy in quantities of at least 10, that gets discounted back down to $22.50 per license, which is extremely cost effective. Plus, it's got a case management function, so you can actually monitor the progress of the couples going through it. Well worth checking out. The next 2 I want to highlight is Grace Marriage and Marriage Team. Grace Marriage takes an innovative approach to marriage enrichment with quarterly one-day marriage enrichment activities, incorporated with date nights in between. Just excellent for the support side. Another resource to highlight is Marriage Team, available at marriageteam.org. This provides Skype coaching services for troubled marriages. As the slide shows, it's very reasonable cost, $399 for 12 sessions, and they provide a money-back guarantee. So if you're working in a diocese, you don't have other resources, you come in with troubled marriages, refer them to Marriage Team. At least you've got something, a referral to, in addition to Retrovi. 2 other options I want to point out also for troubled marriages, and these work well either standalone or as referrals to Retrovi. You see, Retrovi typically will only run 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. What do you do for those couples that show up wanting help in between? These programs are third option and re-engage. I believe every deanery or vicariate ought to be running one or the other of these. They have 3 common characteristics. Number 1, they're programs that are available year-round. Number 2, people can enter at any time, which is very important. If you've got a troubled marriage, you can't wait to refer to them for something that's coming in 3 months. If you're running this on an ongoing basis, they can start next week. And the third is, it can be effective even if only one spouse is willing to begin the process at a time. Then when the other spouse is ready, they can join the process. These are two very well recommended. Reengage is offered through Watermark Community Church. I've already talked about from the grant thing that we're providing opportunities for anybody here to go to Reengage for the Marriage Ministry Training Conference they provide. You'll have a chance to learn about Reengage there. Highly recommended. Every diocese does marriage preparation. There are 3 factors that I would strongly encourage, that I'm hoping every diocese starts normalizing for our couples. Number 1, I really think it's important that we send a message during marriage preparation that they understand that all marriages go through ups and downs. So they're prepared that when their marriage goes through ups and downs, that's just a normal part of the process. And they just need to buckle up and seek the resources they need. That's number 1, very important to normalize. The second is, we want to normalize the process that every couple should be participating in marriage enrichment activities every year. That's a slogan, every couple, every year. That's the only way that we'll be able to keep their marriages revitalized. The third, when I'm doing marriage preparation, I actually have the couples agree that, in writing, that if either party ever requests that they go into marriage counseling, that the other party will willingly participate in that process. If we can get these 3 constructs taught to every person that goes through marriage preparation, it's preparing them for the inevitable ups and downs. They're investing in their marriage throughout the process, and they're shoring up for the troubled times.
So there's lots of stuff that's already been done, but I think there's more opportunities as well. So that concludes it. Thank you very much.